Thanks for participating with me
No,
on
no, I
this.
think it's a good idea.
So, just kind of breaking into Joe, you had some spectacular seasons, as a head basketball coach, and that shouldn't be taken lightly. One of the things that everybody prays for talent, and hey, I would win it all if we just had talent. Well, I know that there's a fact that coaching talent isn't easy. It isn't easy, and getting everybody in on the same path, working in the same heartbeat, that takes a lot of work, and maybe even more so when there is a lot of talent on the court or on the team. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, because I surely dealt with this, is you came off a state championship, and then everybody was probably saying, "Hey, it's back to back time." Hey, let's go back to back with this, which is a huge goal. And the first year that you won it, the goal was probably out there as well. But how did you've heard the term the process. They just believed in the process. How did you, as a coach, get them off of thinking so much about the goal and getting them into the day to day grind or the process? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that I mean, you are 100% right. I will tell you, the first year winning, neither year was easy, but the first year it was kind of like, as the season went on, you're kind of like, we got a legit shot. You keep striving for it, but you're trying to get there, and that was the biggest thing, just getting there. And then once you got there, now let's go win it. And you had that goal. And then I'm not gonna lie, what you said is exactly right. In the interview room after the first state championship, the first question is, how about next year? How about
Yeah.
back to, and you started thinking about that, like, literally as soon as that reporter asked that question.
Yeah.
And the second year was probably the hardest, and it was hard because I don't think anybody realized the amount of pressure that you face being a state champion, with the expectations that you are supposed to repeat, or you have the ability to repeat, because most of your good players are coming back. It was hard. I mean, you would get everybody's best game,
Yeah.
and then, as you know, with our conference, I mean, that year we lost 4 games. We played, gosh, I bet you we probably played 10 nationally ranked teams, and we lost 3 games in our conference. We didn't even win the conference. That's how good our conference was. And it was hard. It was hard. And I think the thing that I probably did the most of is we addressed we addressed it, and we
Mm.
talked about it. And you know, there was a certain expectation of, if you want to get back to this level, this is what we have to do. And we did say, trust the process. You have to trust us as coaches. You have to trust your teammates. And luckily for me, I agree that talent help. You have to have talent. You have to have talent to be able to win. You have
Right.
to have um, you have to have special players to be able to win a state title. There's just no way you cannot have that. But I think the thing that I was lucky with is I had a group of players and a group of parents that all bought in, and they
Yeah.
bought into each other. They bought into the program. Now, not always was it easy. Not always did they agree with me. And but they bought in. And I'll say this, the thing that I had was, I had my best players bought in.
Yeah.
And when I got those guys, I had those guys bought in, then everybody else bought in. And I think, you know, obviously EJ Liddell was a phenomenal player, but he was the most unselfish kid on the team. And I think when your best player is your most unselfish kid, that unselfishness kind of permeates with the group,
Yeah.
where people were taking a back seat. People were wanting other people to be successful. They weren't worried about their own individual stats. They were more worried about the team stats, the team goals. Because we kept saying, team goals are going to allow the individual success. If our team success will allow individual success. So we did talk about that process a lot. We addressed it. Um, I'm not going to lie, I was not the easiest guy to play for, and I've said that to them numerous times since then. And I kind of wish personally I would have enjoyed it more than I did, because I did not enjoy it a whole lot, because only thing I was focused on was making sure I was able. My number one goal was not for me, but for those kids to experience that,
Yeah.
and put them in a position to win. And I'll be honest that there's times where I'm like, gosh, I wish I would have been a little bit more understanding. If I could go back and do it over again, I'd do it differently. But when you talk to those kids and my players, they're all like, Coach, I wouldn't want it any other way, because we wouldn't have had the same outcome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that means a lot.
Yeah. And there's something, I think great leaders are always looking back and what in reflecting. But what you just said is that, like, leadership is not easy, and that's what you were doing. You were doing the best that you could in those moments, but your purpose was really clear in your heart. That you're doing it for the kids, and that the kids surely probably saw that so clearly. That when you have a purpose, it's really self-evident, when you're living and leading from a purpose like that. So they probably gave you some permission to do that because they knew it was about them. I mean, honestly, when they
Yeah,
when they say that, that they we wouldn't have had it any other way, because they probably knew that it was for them. And I think when a leader does that, there is some permission, I think some grace, that those who you're influencing and leading, that permeates to, and that they can see that. It's when the coach, I think, their purpose is not clear, or it's about them, because they see that kids see that as well, that creates that destructive kind of environment. um, that's good stuff, Coach. So you talked a little bit about the process, but what would you say? You even said trust. You got to trust each other. What would you say is some of the most important things on, like, the team leaders? Like, how could they build trust with their teammates, or a coach like yourself, if you're speaking to your coaches, how can a coach build that trust with the kids?
yeah, I think so. A coach can build that trust with the kids. I think the number one thing is, I think the kids will do. They will go through a brick wall for you if they know that the coach truly cares about them, the student athlete, the kids. And I think my kids, even though I was hard on them, they knew that deep down, they knew I cared. And they knew
Yeah.
it wasn't about me. It was more about, I want them to be the most successful person that they possibly can be, both on the court and off the court. And I think, um, you know, I think as long as the kids know that, and they got to know that by your individual talks that you have with them. They have to know that um, you can say all the right things, but if it's not if it doesn't come from the heart,
Yeah.
and kids can, I do believe kids can, they know when you're fake and they know when you're real.
Yeah.
And I do believe um, that I would say not all my players, but most of my players know that from the 15 years I was the head coach here, that they knew I cared about them. They
Yeah.
knew I cared about them in a deep way, and so that gave me some leverage when I could be hard on them, and when I could, back off and things like that. And that's why, I think the kids, they played. Now, not always do they play well because of maybe how I coached them or that, but, there's things I could have done better. But then I think there's also, as far as kids trusting each other, you know, that's something that we talked about a lot in practice. We talked a lot with our team is you've got to trust each other to be successful. And I think, you know, if you implement that from day one, and they know that that's what the culture has to be. It's not about I. It's about we. And you instill that, and you talk about it, and you encourage it. And when we watch film, a lot of times I would sit back and I would talk not about the great shot that was made here or the great defensive play that was made here. I would talk about, you know, the pass or the screen that led up to that shot. Hey, if this doesn't happen, we don't get this is not successful. Or if
Yeah.
that pressure's not on the ball, this kid doesn't get this steal. And so I think as a coach, you have to be careful not to always credit the person who scoring the goals, who's getting the touchdowns, making the touchdown passes,
Yeah.
uh, getting the big hit. It could be, you want to focus. And I learned that a little bit from Mike Waldo. Mike Waldo was very good he'd have great players, but he would always talk about the players that were the screeners, the players that were the defenders. Even though the writers want to write about the person who scored the most points, and
Yeah.
and I think you kind of build that trust and that culture that way to where no, we win and lose as a team. We have to trust each other. I give an example to the kids all the time when I talk about my state championship team with EJ. The second year we're playing Simeon in the O'Fallon shootout, and EJ's got a bumped ankle. We're down one, and I called timeout. I knew it was our last possession, and I knew that he was going to get doubled and triple teamed, but I knew the ball had to go through him for us to win the game. And I told him in the huddle, I said, I'll trust whatever decision you make, I will trust it, and
Oh,
I'll live with it because I know you'll make the right decision. But if you realize you have a triple team or a double team, this guy over here in the wing, if you turn middle, is going to be wide open. And what All-American, what Player of the Year passes the ball to our fifth best player for him to hit a game-winning three-pointer wide open, and it
yeah.
was him. And that's
Yeah.
the true epitome of trust. And where he trusted in that kid, he trusted in that process, and it worked out for us. And that kid hit a game-winning shot at the O'Fallon shootout to win that game against Simeon. And that's just one example, but I think that happens a lot where successful teams, to be successful, you have to have, it can't be just one player. It's got to be
Yeah.
a whole collection of players.
That's awesome. That was one of the most exciting games, in the shootout history,
Yes.
that I witnessed. It was what an awesome game. But just knowing that little backstory just brings so much more meaning to that too. That you spoke those words about trust right before, and that's good stuff, Coach. That's good stuff. So one of the things we're going to talk about in session 3 with these with your student athlete leaders is that, and an element of building that trust with your teammates is being intentional about creating relationships and putting your heart in there. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And so what would you say about relationships or importance of that?
Oh, I think they're huge. That's, my last couple of years, that's why we were so good, is because there was good relationship amongst the players, and there was good relationship between the players and the coaches, where the players felt like they needed to talk to me. They felt free in coming in and talking to me.
Yeah.
I never had a problem with a kid coming in and questioning or asking why we doing this or why don't we do this. It's just how the manner that they do it. Um, I think relationships within a team, I understand that, you know, my philosophy was always, hey, you guys don't have to be the best of friends. It'd be great if you were, but you can't force friendships on a team. But when you're out here together, we're a team, we're brothers, and
Yeah.
you've got to play that way. You've got to act that way. Now, when you leave the court, you leave the gym, that's up to you guys. But when we're here, we're a family, and I think you I don't know. That is the hardest thing to do in high school. I personally feel the hardest thing to do in high school is create that that relationship amongst your teammates, amongst your team. Because in college, it's really easy because everybody in college goes to a dorm to their buddies. They don't, they don't. They're a lot of them are living together. A lot of them are in the same dorm, however that may be. But you spend a ton of time together.
Yeah.
Where in high school, you spend the day here at school, you're in different classes, then you have your 2 hour, 2.5 hour uh, session for just basically you're only doing that for 4 months of the
Yeah.
season or 3 months of the season, and then you split off and you go home and you go to your parents and you go to your wherever you stay and you spend the rest of the time with them. And so
Yeah.
that bonding time, that cohesion that you could possibly have is hard to create in high school just because of that type of thing. So we would look to do fun things,
Yeah.
whether it be bowling, whether it be team activities, whether it be community service. Just try to get those guys together. Um, we were big about going out to dinner as much as we could. Whether I always personally liked taking in the summer. I always like going up to Chicago for a tournament, just so the eight or ten of us can be together for 2 straight
Yeah.
days
Yeah.
and building that relationship of we're staying together, we're in a hotel room. Parents came, but they usually stayed away. The kids got to eat 3 or 4 meals together. We're sitting at Buffalo Wild Wings together as a team, just doing those types of things to build that sense of community, that sense of trust.
Yeah.
And I think it's like I said, I think it's easier in college just because everybody's in the same boat. Where in
Yeah.
high school, you practice and you go home. It's
Yeah.
kind of like what we do as a job now. You got a family here at work, but you're here together for 6 or 7 hours, then you go home and depart off to your own families.
Yeah. Joe, that's a great point. And one thing I heard you saying was you were intentional about creating those opportunities, and what you were doing was intentionally like giving them opportunity to create relationship with either themselves going bowling or with you, because you understand that relationships and that piece of building trust is like, if we don't have that, this thing goes sour, real quick. And I think coaches sometimes get lost in the X's and the O's and the goal of winning and lose track of, man, that's the magic sauce, and if you're not, like you said, if you're not intentional about it, that stuff doesn't happen. It just doesn't
Right.
happen. It's not going to happen sometimes authentically, but you're not going to go bowling on accident. You're not going to go up and make have dinner as a team on accident. Those have to be intentional things that you plan as a leader for those things to help manifest. So that's awesome. That's awesome. And so Joe, we're going to wrap this up because I've taken enough of your time, and heading into spring, I know you got a lot to do today. So I appreciate you. Good luck with the rest of this, and I'll be getting this out to you
All right.
soon.